baby, don't get too close to the fire. I might get burned a little, but I don't mind. I need your love.
Well, Sylvia, thank you so much for hanging out today. I am so excited to talk to you. I got some really cool questions to ask, and I want everyone to hear about what all you're up to. And so thank you for joining the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, it's cool. I've been listening to you for the past week, and of course I was familiar with a lot of your stuff. I'm a country music nerd, and especially with the 80s and 90s, and to look back at your career, and before we get into anything else, you were what kind of whirlwind was it, especially in the early 80s, mid 80s, when Sylvia was flying high?
Yeah, it was a different world in like almost every aspect. I was in my early 20s when I signed with RCA, and so I was just a youngster, and everything was fresh and new, and just I was living the dream. I was living the dream of becoming a recording artist and touring, and it was just it was a whirlwind. Really, the 80s were just a whirlwind for me. I was doing like 250 days plus a year on concert dates. I just lived on the road for basically a decade of the 80s, and continued to do some touring in the 90s. But I mainly in the 90s was focusing on songwriting, and eventually by about 1996 I started recording on my own label, and have been recording on my own label ever since. My last record, which is Nature Child, A Dreamer's Journey, that came out in 2022.
Yeah.
and Second Bloom, that came out in 2018. And yeah, I've been busy songwriting. This one came out in 2016. So yeah, it's been
I love that album cover. That one you just showed.
Oh yeah, It's All in the Family.
Yeah, that's a cool album cover.
Yeah, that was taken in my living room with my dog.
Oh, that's
Kate,
cool.
Right? She just literally wandered into the picture. We were taking the photos, wandered in and sat down, and she's in like two pictures. And when we looked at all the photo shoot, that's the one.
There you go.
She was, it's like from then on, it's like she's got to be on every album cover, and like she was on the back. She was on the back of this one.
Oh wow!
Bloom album.
Mm-hmm.
And she was on the inside of the Nature Child album.
That's awesome.
Oh, there she is, with my mother's dog Shiloh.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, it became a thing.
Yeah. Who were you? Who was in your class of when nobody was out, like with RCA? Were you touring with any certain artists, or is it just was it a Sylvia tour? Were they putting y'all out on the road with other people back then?
No, back then, at least in my experience, I wasn't. The label wasn't involved in my touring.
Okay.
I had a booking agent, and I toured with a lot of different people. I did a tour with Kenny Rogers. I did lots of tours with the Statler Brothers, with T.G. Shepherd. Who all? There were a lot of conglomerate shows. Like you would have, 20 different artists on the stage in the summertime, and you're working with everybody.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I toured. I was just on the road all the time, and most of those dates I was doing by myself. I was doing with, club dates and arenas, and I know some things with George Strait. I did, I think, the rodeo there in Houston, at least one year, maybe twice. So at some point in time or another, I pretty much worked with everybody.
Yeah,
As
it sounds like it.
tour. I remember right before Nobody, I think it was the summer before, I did a series of dates with Marty Robbins.
Oh,
And
wow.
it ended up being his last tour before his death. And
Oh,
he invited me. I remember during that time, he invited me one day onto his bus. He said, "I want you to see my day." He had a heart transplant. He was one of the early people that had a heart transplant.
hmm.
And he showed me his counter in his little kitchen on his bus. And it was just, it was full. I don't know how many pills he had to take. He said most of them were to keep him from his body from rejecting the heart.
Oh, wow.
So I just feel so grateful for those experiences that I had during the 80s and 90s when I got to be with all these other artists doing what I was doing.
Oh, no doubt.
You're asking other people on the label. Dolly Parton was on the label.
Oh, yeah.
When I was on RCA. Oh gosh, just Razzie Bailey. I'm trying to think of all the different people that were on at that time. But it was a very rich time in music. I look back at the 80s, and I'm so glad that was my era back in those days. And hopefully I'm still in an era today because I still continue to record. But
Oh, yeah.
that's the time period where most people in the public would remember me because having radio, music was on the radio. My music's not on the radio anymore. So unless you are listening to internet radio or or you're streaming your music.
And RCA, of course, was that was one of the labels to be on,
Alabama, I didn't mention.
Oh, yeah, they were.
Alabama and I were signed to the label at about exactly the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, I did a few things with them, but I never really actually toured with them. But I knew them, and, we'd go out on radio tours together to promote our music to the radio stations and things like that. But speaking of those old days of my records, most people may not realize this. Well, anybody that is a fan of my music, they might realize that the only album of mine that's up on the internet for streaming or for download is my Just Sylvia album that has nobody on it. My first album, Drifter, came out in 1981, and that's a year before CDs were made. So it was that album, as it was released as an LP, was never put out on a CD, and not legally anyway. I think there's some bootleg stuff out there, but it was never actually released digitally by the label. And so it was called Just Sylvia. That's the album that had nobody on it. And I had Drifter before it. I had Snapshot, the album Snapshot, right after the Just Sylvia album. I had another album called Surprise, another one called One Step Closer, and then another one that never was released, that didn't come out. They put out a greatest hits instead of putting out the last album that I recorded for them. So the good news that I'm going to share with everybody.
I want to hear about this.
I just learned about this like a week or two, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
RCA, it's not it's RCA sub-label, but actually Sony Music owns my old recordings from the 80s. And I've been really in contact with some really nice people, Rob Santos and Tim Smith, and some great people there at Sony that want to put my music out digitally, all of it.
Oh, wow.
And so starting May 10th, Drifter will be up on all digital streaming platforms.
That's big news. That's great.
And for each week following, the next week, that Drifter will come out May 10th on streaming platforms. I'm reading it here from my piece of paper that I printed out. May 17th, the Snapshot album, as it was recorded in the order of the songs, will be up for digital streaming.
Oh, wow.
On the 17th of May. And then on the 24th of May, surprise, that album will be up for digital streaming. And on the 31st of May, One Step Closer will be up, the whole album as people would have heard them back in the day.
What
which
about
just
that?
fills me to no end. I have hoped for this for a long time, and at different times over the years, I have contacted the label, but you know, as you know, in these modern times, one big company buys another big company, and then all people change, and you know, who knows what all the circumstances were, but it feels like just now is the right time for this to, you know. And so people that are interested, that loved my music back in the day, very shortly here you're going to be able to hear those albums, stream them on the internet, on your computer or wherever.
That's awesome.
In their entirety. And here's the big surprise.
I thought that was the big surprise.
That's a big surprise, but there's an even bigger surprise, because there's been talk for decades now, since 1987, a record that I recorded with Brent Mayer as the producer. Brent Mayer and Don Potter were the producers. They were also producing the Judds back then.
I know them. Yeah, they're great.
I was working with Brent during that time. And Brent also and Don Potter were the producers of One Step Closer, that album. But at the last minute, RCA decided not to put out a greatest hits album. And then after that, then I went by the wayside, like a lot of artists did at that time. So that album was going to be called Knockin' Around. Knockin' Around is one of the songs on the album. Well, Sony Music said that they want to put it out. And so it will be available.
That's great.
On June 7th, it will be up for digital distribution, meaning digital. You can go to Spotify or whatever your favorite platform is, put in my name, just, you know, I always just recorded by Sylvia.
Yeah.
And Knockin' Around, and you'll be able to find that album. And of course, I'll be making announcements on Facebook and stuff, but you're the first person.
Hey, that's breaking news.
I talked to about
that's great.
Yeah, this is a big deal in my life.
It is.
Not to maybe a lot of people out there in the world. This is a big deal.
That is a big deal. I love it. I'm so excited for you. And that album has songs that no one's ever heard, right? Is that correct?
No, there have been songs from that album that have been on. There's a record called, or a CD called The Anthology. And a few of the songs from the Knockin' Around album were put on that anthology. Okay. But no one has ever heard the album top to bottom. And actually, there's 2 or 3 on this album that have never been released anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So people will get to hear the Knockin' Around album as it was going to be released in 1987.
Wow. That's cool. Exciting. Oh, yeah. That really is. That's so cool. I mean, May and then June. That's a lot of stuff coming out.
Yeah, so I'm going to be on social media. Usually, Facebook and Instagram are kind of my speed, and I make announcements on there about my career things, and when I put out albums on my record label, Red Pony Records. So this is. I just want to say I am so grateful to Rob Santos and to Tim Smith at Sony Music for making this possible. Yeah. For these music to be out there and available for people to listen to again.
And it needs to be.
You know, well, it just feels like it's a part of my legacy that just kind of side shelved. Yeah. And no, not blaming anybody, nobody's fault. Just the way things kind of come about. And I really believe that things happen when they're meant to happen. So this is just perfect timing in my book.
That's awesome. I love it. That's exciting. I can't wait. That's great. So with all of that happening, will you do you plan on doing any are you going to be doing any special release parties or kind of a show or anything, or just
I don't have any plans at the moment because, like I told you earlier, I just found out about
this. New.
This is brand new. I have no idea what this might spark, but I'm
Yeah.
open. I'm open to possibilities of maybe what wants to happen with it. And it may just be that they're just up there on the internet for people to listen to now.
Yeah.
And as they've never been able to do before. So that makes me very happy. And
Mm-hmm.
I work as a life and career coach.
Oh,
And
nice.
I just a couple of days ago got back from Michigan. I was in Midland, Michigan, speaking with, they brought me up to be the keynote speaker at their Rise Summit, the
Oh,
Women in
cool.
Rise Summit. So I just got back from that and was talking about helping, the idea of renewing our dreams, maybe our childhood dreams, or maybe the dreams that have kind of fallen by the wayside and we want to re-embrace. So I work as a life and career coach. I do speaking engagements like that and
Oh, that's awesome.
workshops, and so that's mainly what I focus on today. And occasionally make a record like I did in 2002.
Yeah.
And, that's just kind of my life these days, and taking care of my dogs. I've got Kate and Gloria, and that's my life. I have a simple, beautiful life.
I love it. I love it. Let me ask you this, Sylvia. What's a common reason or comment that you get when when people don't they just let life go by and they never reignite that dream they once had, whether it be, or whatever the dream may have been. Because so many people just, because me and my buddy were talking about the other night, so many people don't chase the dream of whatever that dream may be, What's one of the common reasons that people just let it go, push it in the back of their mind?
There's a lot of reasons, but often, early in life, if we have a dream to do something, just, our families or friends or at school can say, oh, that's not a reasonable dream. And in fact, when I was in high school, I had a great art teacher, Mr. Black, and I had the ability to draw. I'm not great at it, but I can draw portraits, and I love to draw. And he was very encouraging of me to go to college and become, an art major and go, an artist. And I said, no, I'm moving to Nashville. I'm going to be a singer, And he was like, you need to be art. I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. I can draw. Okay. I love drawing. It's fine, but that's not my career path. And, I don't think he understood that. But I think that happens to people, people, our family, maybe over the years, I've coached several people whose family was in a certain line of work, and they felt a lot of pressure to go into that line of work. They got to go a family business or because sometimes the arts especially are not considered a practical way of making,
right.
But it can be all kinds of things, and people get off their path and do this other thing. And maybe kind of the kicker is that they're really good at it. And so I'm often talking with people about what their really highly developed skills are versus what their gifts are. And our gifts, there's a difference. I mean, there's things that we can be really, really good at and we get a lot of accolades for, but our gifts are things that we just can get lost in. We consistently enjoy doing them. They fill our heart and souls. And often people don't get past the idea of, I don't know how I'd make a living at that thing that I love to do all the time. But I think the first thing is to find out, what are my gifts? Be able to articulate what are my gifts, and then see if we can begin to integrate ways of being in our lives where we're using those gifts. We all have to do things that we don't enjoy. Like we got to take out the trash, and we got we got to do things that maybe pay the bills sometimes, and that's quite all right too. But to know the difference and to make choices in life where we're choosing more and more, where we have this space where we're doing this thing that is really our gifts being expressed in the world. So a lot of the work I do with people is talking about those kinds of things.
Oh, I love that.
Helping them get the focus and the ideas. It comes from them. I don't, as a coach, I don't have information as far as I don't, they don't come to me for advice. They come
Right.
to me for questions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopefully asking the right questions to help them get clarity.
Mm. And you love that. Do you love like those kind of, I mean, what, I guess what, had you always been interested in like mentoring or like, coaching, or
Well,
that?
I always love the idea of doing something that is of help to other people or of
Right.
service to others in some way. And I felt like music, is a way to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So often, people will say, oh, this music helped me get through a really tough time, or this song was very helpful to me in understanding something about my relationship or
Yeah.
whatever. So in that way, I think music is a helping profession in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So when things in the 90s, toward the end of the 90s, where things really slowed down as far as nothing in music felt like it really wanted to happen, I began questioning myself and saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if I don't do music, what is it that I would want to do? And that's when I heard about coaching, which really just becoming kind of mainstream, just in the early stages of people.
Yeah.
Often when I got my certification as a coach, I would have to first explain to people what a coach is. They thought it was like a sports coach, but
Yeah.
it was like, no, I'm a life and career coach. And so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah.
It's often when you hit a wall somewhere where you feel like this just isn't wanting to happen. What wants to happen? I had to stop and kind of pivot and say, okay, what else is it I can do in life if, bookings aren't happening? I don't have the resources really to make music. No one's interested in recording me. So what's life telling me? So that's when I came upon coaching and found this thing that I love. I mean, I truly love being in these deep conversations with people about what really matters most to them.
That's awesome. That's encouraging. You're awesome. How did, was the label who wanted you to go by one name, or is that something you wanted to do when it all started?
Well, at the time I was married to someone with the last name Allen, and there was Deborah Allen was already on the label.
Oh yeah.
It was on RCA at the time.
Yep.
And my maiden name is Kirby, and it's the name I have now.
Yeah.
Went back to Kirby. So it's the name I was born with, and RCA wasn't very keen on using that name because they thought it sounded too pedestrian, too much like a vacuum cleaner. Our family had, though we're no relation to them, we had a Kirby vacuum cleaner when I was growing up. So I knew that the next thing they were going to say was, well, let's make up a name for you. And I said, just off the top of my head, I just said, what if we just use my first name? There aren't any other Sylvias in country music. And there was this little pause. And I said, okay. I mean, that was all the discussion.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's what we did. That's how it happened.
You are in a elite class of those that can go by one name and be recognized. You got your Chers, Madonnas, Sylvias, Winona, Reba. So I think it's pretty cool. Seriously, that's pretty neat. Very, very cool. I was looking up. Let's see, what was the album that came out in 22? Nature Child.
Nature Child: A Dreamer's Journey.
Yeah, tell me, how did that come? How did that come about?
Well, this is an interesting story because I started writing this music in 1987 or 88, maybe 88. It was the year I got off the road for full-time touring. My deal with RCA ended. I really wanted to focus on songwriting because I knew I could write music, and I had an epiphany during that last year or so that I was on the road. I was on stage one night, and I remember thinking, the people really only get to know me between the songs. They don't really get to see me or know me during the songs because, you're out there, you're trying to record the best song you can, and you're trying to have hits on the radio, and nothing wrong with any of that. But I was feeling this urge to connect with the audience in a different way. And the beautiful thing that was happening during those years was that kids, little bitty kids, especially from nobody on, show up at my concerts and knew every word to Nobody and Snapshot. And these are, adult themed songs, but these are little bitty kids singing along and, had little dance moves to the music. And the idea struck me. I would love to have music that I could sing to these kids, the things I'd really want to say to them, and that was the spark that started this. And 34 years later, I finally put it out.
Oh, wow.
Because half of it I wrote with my friend Verlin Thompson back in the late 80s and early 90s. And then it just got shelved because I, at that time, got married, and just life took me down a different path. And but I always knew that at some point I was going to make this record. But I didn't know it was going to be that long in the future, But after we made, my friend John Mock, who's my really good friend, and we always record my records together, we made this record, Second Bloom, which was the re-recording of a lot of the hits, kind of bring music from the 80s that had kind of an 80s sound and bring a little bit more into modern day sound, but honoring the original way I was recorded. I didn't change them up totally, but I wanted to bring them in where when people came to my concerts now, that they would hear something similar on a recording.
Oh yeah.
So after we put that record out, Second Bloom, it was like it was clear. Now's the time. Now is the time. In fact, I'd tried to record this record a couple of times in the past. It just didn't happen. It just didn't work. But this time, I mean, this is, for me, nobody else has to agree with me. This is the best thing I've ever done.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is the best record I've ever made. This record and this music reflects what I find most important in my life about dreaming dreams, about, there's titles on here like Don't Be Afraid to Dream, If I Only Had Wings, Dancing Over an Emerald Isle. It's all about, it's getting us in touch with that subliminal part of ourselves that knows what we're here to do, but maybe we block ourselves from doing it. And so if you want to dream your dreams and you want to get inspired to do that, this is the record. That's
awesome. Do you ever, when you go and do a keynote and you go speak at different places, do you get to talk about that record or?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, the keynote that I just gave up in Michigan, in Midland, I use slides from the videos that we've made from this record.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I have a YouTube channel, or you can just go on my website, sylviamusic.com, and under the tab videos, and you can watch the videos that we made from this.
Oh, okay.
But I used a lot of the visual part of this record in my keynote.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, I'm finally, that's my dream. My dream since I became a coach officially became a coach in 2002, but began the training in 2000. My dream has been, how do I bring music and coaching together?
There you go.
This real symbiotic way, powerful, that brings all of what I am passionate about in life together. And it's happening now. And I'm just
that's awesome. Yeah, I can tell just hearing you talk about it, how excited and passionate you are about that. Both worlds how you were able to put them together, I love that. Are you, have you ever thought about, I'm sure you have, but writing a book or a devotion or something like that?
I've thought about it, and it may happen. Actually, there's a kind of the outline of a story around the songs on the Nature Child album that I've thought about.
Okay.
Trying to write, but I've never written a book, so I mean it's a little daunting. But
yeah,
need to face my fears. I gotta apply my own to that. But I think if it's meant to happen, it's gonna
Oh yeah,
happen.
no doubt.
But I'm just thrilled with where life has put me. Even if I don't write a book, I feel like this music is enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got some big stuff coming up, and I'm excited. We'll be promoting it too. Sylvia, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and sharing all these wonderful things, wonderful news.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to get to share it with you and with your
I know. That's awesome. I'm excited. And but anyway, sylviamusic.com is the website, and you can also follow Sylvia on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Is it on Facebook just Sylvia?
Yeah, there's a band page, Sylvia. And then I also have a page, Sylvia Kirby. So my pictures, people would recognize it. I know there's a lot of people that clone people and stuff, but I don't think they do right now. But yeah, they can just put in Sylvia band page. I think Sylvia country singer, maybe country music or something like that. I can't remember my tag.
Anyway, it's okay. It'll be in the show notes when this comes out, and the links and all that will be there for everyone to see. I'm actually just looking it up right now because here it is. Sylvia. I found Sylvia Kirby. Oh, there it is. A Dreamer's Journey. Sylvia.kirby.singer.
That's one. Yeah.
And then the other one is
it's just they'll see it just says Sylvia, and there's a picture, almost looks like it's a picture from the Nature Child album that I'm not sure what that one is. Maybe Sylvia country singer or country music or something like that.
But it won't be hard for people to find. But before this comes out, I'll make sure I find the correct one as well. Okay, well, good deal. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. This has been great, and we can't wait to get the be able to stream and listen to the music that you have been a part of. It's like it's all fresh. It's like it's just all these albums coming out in May. I know it's exciting. It feels fresh, and it is a big deal. So I'm glad that all that's happening for you.
Well, Britt, thank you so much for reaching out to me, and this has just turned out to be beautiful.
Oh, it's awesome! It's awesome.
They say don't get too close to the fire.